Welcome back to another episode of Who Should You Choose, the video series where I go through the prior videos, questions, and comments and help you with your HUT lineup decision. Been a few days since the last episode, and the new event did drop, the HUT Closers event. So, yet another brand new event that hasn't been in HUT before. And I actually like the concept of it. However, it did bring up a lot of hatred from the fan base, or at least the hardcores that do talk about HUT online, simply because it's a lot of alumni players, and I think that that's something that's been a takeaway for this year is that the alumni used to be kind of held off for the power up icons, and now what's happening because power up icons and chase cards aren't really a thing, they're utilizing events as like the end all be all of everything, so they have to include alumni, and sometimes there's just straight up alumni events entirely, and the player base just very vocal on that. I think there is a place to have alumni in events, but it just seems that there's a big disdain for it this year. And maybe that's because of the reduction of cards that are released due to in real life performance, like Team of the Week going to from 20 cards a week to 6 essentially would be one. And the fact there's no prime times anymore, and game breaker cards are like, oh, I guess we could do game breakers now. There's no rhyme or reason to them. And I think that that's leading to a lot of issues with it. My question is, when it comes to this stage of the game, what would make an event exciting? And obviously, a lot of people are going to say the fantasy event. I want to think outside of that. The fantasy event is, and the fantasy cards are perfect, or at least they're very close. I think the perfect fantasy cards are ones that aren't just goals. They are block shots, penalty minutes, assists, and again, obviously, it can't be a 1-for-1. Like you can't have, penalty minutes go for every one penalty minute they go +1 overall. I think 5. Like if you release I use this as an example. If you release a Matt Rempe card, or it's a bad example. How about Matthew Olivier? Big fighter, and someone who plays very, very on the edge, and also is decent at scoring too. But for his role, but for every 5 penalty minutes, he goes up +1 overall. It means if he gets into a fight, 5 penalty minutes +1 overall, and then you can go and look at the averages just like they do for the goals for fantasy. They scout them out. Like there is a rhyme and reason as to the players that they pick, right? They try to make it where it's about 30 goals or 20, 25 goals because they have to start low enough. And then they kind of use averages and where the cards are projected to do and players are projected to do, right? You can do the same thing with all other attributes. I would have loved a Chris Tanev card for block shots, for example. Again, right? Like I think that, or Mario Ferraro from the Sharks. I think that would make the fantasy event perfect. I also think that if a card hits 99, in the next release or event, give them card art. Go and get that commissioned. I think if a card hits 99, whether it's a month later, right? When they release the next event's master set card art, just have that commissioned, right? Have that commissioned, and I think that would be just like a nice touch on it. But when it comes to new events now, are they cooked essentially because of the warp speed event? Because those were 92 overalls, and if you look at a lot of the attributes on them outside of their skating and I guess their shot, which are the two most important, they're not really all that good, in terms of the newer cards. But I think that I'm trying to come up with what would be the fix, because I think that's the only way to have a healthy discourse. It's like, okay, if they're not making events good, what would make them? The other thing that I do want to talk about before we get into the questions from last episode is it looked like there was an issue with the objectives. So if you completed all of the closers objectives, you've got 391 overall event items, which is the bare minimum of event items you need for a master set player item. And I was like, oh my god, maybe that's intended. Turns out that's not the case. Like 2 a.m. on Saturday, they flipped the switch and fixed that issue. There's a reason why I didn't make any videos on it or anything like that, and that's because if I bring attention to it, a lot of the hardcore player base ends up hating it because I'm like, okay, they're going to fix it, even though I feel like I would help a lot of people out. What I would recommend, guys, join my Discord, join my streams. I'll openly talk about all that stuff there. I just don't want to leave it on the internet or on YouTube, because then essentially what ends up happening is enough people see it, enough noise gets made, and then it's taken down. And, so I don't really comment on those glitches. But my Discord, there's 4,000 people that are just addicted to Hut, so it was mentioned in there quite often. So if you missed out on it, unfortunately, that is the case. The other major issue with this event, again, I talked about this quite a bit. One of the parameters for an event should be make a master set item for free by doing the objectives. And I asked this on my stream. Has anyone done the math and gone and looked at, like, can you get a free master set player item? I guess you would get pretty close. The issue is that it's going to depend on what you pull, because you are getting a lot of packs and things from moments or from just playing the game. You do get quite a few packs, and the pull rates are far better than what they were. But the problem is that 91s are quite high, and pulling a 91 is still tough to do. So I would love to know what would make a good event. Like, what would get you to be like, I'm logging in and I'm grinding. The fantasy event is clearly one of them. I remember, a couple weeks ago, I was grinding after months, about a month of like just playing sparingly for Matthew Nyes, right, for the playoff one. So just wanted to float that question out there, because I'm always curious to hear your feedback of what is actually going to be a good fix. Let's get into the questions that I took a look at. So, because always a heated gamer, my man Because. Do you think the 26 version of this PWHL game will be better than 25? Will the scripted tilt be as prominent? Will you be 1-9 or 9-1 and then finish every champs run 10-9-1 because of their scripted algorithm? You know, where every loose puck battle does some crazy speed up pinball action to get to the opposing team, or bounce just high enough that none of your 5 players can retrieve it until opposition has made a line change and managed to get back in the play before the puck settles. Or one team can intercept a pass with 0 energy and not facing the puck, but you have 3 players in position, but they can't figure it out. I have talked and replied and highlighted you so many times. You're very heated at the game, and for good reason sometimes. I think that you would stand to just not play the game for a little while, find a different game. I want to talk about the champs run thing, though. That is the algorithm working as intended. So, and the reason why is, if you are a half-decent player, the first 5 games or so of Hut Champs, you're matching up against anyone. Okay, it could be someone that goes 18-2 every week. It could be someone that goes 2-18 every week. And that's just how it's going to be. Some weeks, if you're a pretty decent player, you're going to have pretty easy runs. You get to the second 10 games. If you go and look at the average Division 2 or Division 3 player, and you look at your records from the first 10 games to the second 10 games, it's probably going to be pretty staggering. Like, I would hazard a guess I have about a 30% win percentage, and I'm in high Division 2. I'm usually a Division 1 player. I get about 13 wins in champs, or 14 wins if I play all my games. But my first 10, I do so much better than my second 10. That's just because when you're 8-1, you're going to match up with other players that have 7 wins more than losses, right? So you're going to match up with guys that are 10-3, right? Like, you're just meeting better players. That's the algorithm at work. In terms of the tilt and things like that, there is a lot that they put into the game, and it's so hard to quantify it. I know I can tell you it's goalies. Like, when you're getting goalied in this game, that's what's extremely frustrating, because if you play the game enough, you know the ways to score. Okay? And you know the ways, to beat the goalie, and you know the ways your opponent's trying to beat the goalie. And there are some times where it just does not happen. You're doing everything in your power. DDD one-timers, low shots, low far side, forehand, backhand, forehand, all that, and it just doesn't go in. And then you get just a floater scored on you. I can tell when, like, EA's trying, I think, or that's what I say. It's just there's no way to prove it. I don't know how to quantifiably show it, because the game is luck driven. So I'm assuming that would mean that there's luck, added into all the calculations at all times. And maybe there is, but they will never admit that. The 99 Flurry is the worst card of all time. Try to tell you guys this. No matter how you play, your goaltender will never bail you out. It will never. There will be like a stretch of like 10 to 15 games where, when you first get a new goalie and he's playing well, placebo. Like, you're like, oh, sick. Play out 50 games with every goalie. I would say it's about 30. By 30 games of online play, or whatever way you play, if you play offline, by 30 games, all of your goaltenders will be within a percentage point in terms of their save percentage. And if they're not, it'll be lower. I just did it with Evgeny Nabokov, who looked like a half-decent card stat-wise. He's 6 foot. I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. Under 80% save percentage. I put in the 89 Markstrom 5/4 overall less, and he had like an 84% save percentage, which is huge over the span of 30 games. So seeing people do the L2 skate, glitch skate, and wild card just pisses me off. It's not that try hard. I make them watch all my replays whenever I see it. Yeah, I've in my old age gotten really frustrated by that. I'm floating the idea of something that I always do by the end of the year is I just get to Division One. I bear down. I play an absurd amount of rivals in the summertime, and it's just as hard, arguably, when it comes to getting divisions. Like no matter when you do it, whether it's a launch or later on in the year, almost equally the same in terms of difficulty. Yes, the majority of the player base dies out, right? But the guys that you're playing are the hardcores that have 99 overall teams. Like it just like you're the amount of players that you can choose from to play is so much smaller, but those players are still as skilled. And if you look, Division One, there's like less than 1,000 players total in Division One, which is staggering to me, which is crazy. And one of the things I was going to do is reach out to a lot of the players that I know that are some of them among the best in the game, and be like, if you had one thing, you had to tell people how to get, or what's the difference between Division Two and Division One? What is it? And the L2 glitch gate and learning it for sure is one of them. And as I get older, I just hate seeing stuff like that because it's not in real hockey. D2D one-timers are annoying to see in game, but that is a real hockey play. It doesn't green up and you're shooting lasers, but a one-timer is in real life. Like that we can all agree on. But the getting speed out of a mohawk is just not. There's players that are so good at skating that they can keep their speed. They're not getting more out of it. That's the problem. I have Celebrini, but it's so expensive to upgrade them. FEA. Actually, never mind. It's not overly expensive. It was around 180K. Yeah, the 85s, because 85s have created quite a bit because the fantasy cards are gone now. But it's still very expensive. Like 180K for a card just to upgrade them that you have still. Frustrating, but yeah, it's not super, super expensive. New mode called Fantasy. That'd be cool. Fantasy cards all year. Like if they just had fantasy cards at all points. I mean, it would just crater every other event. I'm just curious what the hate you have for every Vegas players. Stone is already a fantastic card, and now at 95, he's even better. Same with Howden. Yes, his abilities are brutal, but just throw Silver Unstoppable Force on him, he's great. Just seems like unreasonable hate in my opinion. I would be stunned if I said I hate these cards when I was going over them. This strikes me as like not you yourself, but I see this as like the softest stuff on the internet, and it's this scenario. I say, hey, I don't think Brett Howden is a great card because he has brutal abilities. And if he gets to 99 overall, and you're comparing all the other cards that can get to 99 overall, I don't think he's very good in that comparison. What you hear when I say that is, you hate Brett Howden, he's an awful card. If you go back and watch my videos on it, or my video ranking it, I simply say that I don't like his abilities. And if he gets to 99, they would have to go on a deep run. And we've already got 99s, and Matthew Nyes is 1 goal away, and he had 2 goals, in the first game? And that was in the first round, right? Mark Stone scored 2 goals, and they were down in the series, which is why I didn't like his card. Again, guys, you're just playing probability when it comes to this. If you go back and look at my rankings, I'm trying to give everyone the best piece of advice so that A is the most risk adverse, so that if it doesn't go well, you're not completely screwed. But B, try and give you the advice that will help your teams out the most. And if you go and look, Svechnikov was number 1, Nyes was number 2. So far, those are the 2 best fantasy players. I also said Brock Nelson would be 1, but I also mentioned in that video that Dallas and the Avalanche was a very hard series because either one could get eliminated. And it just, unfortunately, that is how it worked out. But I don't hate the Vegas Golden Knights players. Brett Howden's card is not nearly as exciting as Svechnikov with truculence or Matthew Nyes with close quarters. Right? Like that's all it is. I think when you say something that is of difference of other people's opinions on the internet, I use this example all the time. If you ask someone, do they like waffles or pancakes? And you say, I like waffles, then people on the internet, just like in this example here, you go, what, you ate pancakes? Like that's just, no, I didn't say that, right? I think the draft was great for the league and more so the fan bases. This has really shown that wanting your team to tank for higher positions may not always mean getting the first pick. Two teams that were 10th and 14th with less than 5% chance to win have now moved up into the top 5. And this is a reminder to all fans that just because you have a 25% chance to win, you will still lose 3 to 4 times as well. People too often will talk about needing to be like the NFL, where it is solely based on standings. I think that just ruins the spirit of competition towards the end of the season. They have put too many teams in the NHL. I've talked about this a lot, and it's probably a hot take because a lot of people will disagree with me. But as someone who has watched hockey for the last 25 years of my life, and I'm not like a scout or anything like that, there is like, and this happens with every generation, but there's like a glory days of hockey, right? And while the skill is as high as it's ever been, it's from specific players, right? Not all out dominant teams. And I think the reason for that, and there's no argument, there can be no argument to this, is that the league is very watered down. All right. You added in Vegas and you added in Seattle, 32 teams now in the NHL. That is 50 AHL level players that are now added into the league that now have a job. 50 AHL players that could never crack a lineup prior to those two teams being added in. Is it good for the sport? Absolutely. Getting more markets and fan bases, 100%. It's good for the sport. It's good for the owners. And, I can understand that. But you have so many teams now. As a fan of someone watching that's favorite team is a rebuilder, I had never in my life experienced the 20 years I've been a Sharks fan, experienced them fail really. And fail in the sense that they didn't make the playoffs. My first, I think it was 17 years of being a Sharks fan, they missed twice. And that's what I meant by being a failure. And I saw a cup run. I saw multiple conference finals runs, and they only got knocked out in the first round, I believe, 3 times in those 17 years. So it's not like they were just one and dones. That being said, as they've tanked now to be bad, you are now adding in 2 more picks into the first round, right? So it just makes it even more difficult. And when you don't have the franchise players at the top, right, and you miss one of those teams, Arizona or Buffalo, if you miss on your early picks, right, like that can be an entire year wasted. An entire year is now gone from that franchise, and it makes it more difficult when teams winning the lottery get quote unquote bailed out. They've already started to move away from it with the inclusion of the you can only win the lottery twice in 5 years. I think it's a good thing. You saw New Jersey just continually win the lottery, and it helped their franchise, right? And but if you in the adverse, look at Detroit. Yzerman, I think there's real questions now as to whether he's an actual great GM, but they have been absolutely smoked by the draft lottery every single year. I think there was like a stat where in the last 10 years, they've fallen back from their original pick spot, like every year but 2 or something like that. It's crazy. And they can't get out of they couldn't deal with that, right? Because now you have to do even better scouting and I just think that I'm excited for the New York Islanders because I think they desperately need help. And it really doesn't impact the Sharks all that much because they get 2nd overall instead of a 1st. And I don't think this year, even though I would desperately want the Sharks to get Matthew Schaefer, I do not think it is not a Macklin Celebrini and then 2nd overall, right? Like it is not that kind of situation. So I honestly think because there's so many teams, it should just be the worst. Also, you're telling hockey players to not win. It can't be done with the guys on the bench. They will always play to their highest ability. It's in the front office that tanking happens. Diehard fan here, been following Eklund for the past few years. He's smaller, but he is just such a dog and his potential is really high. Would be so cool if he went to San Jose to play with his brother in Macklin. Would be really cool marketing as well for the Sharks. If they took Eklund at 2 and didn't go Misa, as someone who's followed the OHL and watches a lot of the OHL, seen Misa a ton, it better be a situation where Greer traded back. And if he does that, I'm okay with it. I'm actually okay with them. If they don't get Schaefer, I'm cool with them trading the 2nd overall pick, getting something crazy in return, and they end up getting Victor Eklund. I'm all right with that. Admittedly, I spent some money on this game on only 3 separate occasions. First, when I bought the game around the holidays, same amount I would have spent buying the Ultimate Edition. Second time was during Team of the Year to make sure I had enough fodder to make McDavid. And then just recently for the Team Builder packs to make both Burns and Anderchuk. I hate EA's business model of microtransactions in their games, but I agree with you, but the content need to be worth it, i.e. team builder packs, X Factor packs. But it does really help for them to make up for the time I don't have to play the game. People are obviously addicted to the gambling aspect of packs and therefore will continue to spend money on packs that aren't guaranteed, but I wonder what the purchase data says on packs that are guaranteed and give you bang for your buck. Lastly, when would you start taking warp speed players out for fantasy hockey players? I love fantasy hockey this year as it keeps me more interested in the live games going on, but I'm running out of spots for them on the team. So, a couple of things here. Yeah, I have no problem if you spend money in the game because you don't have a lot of time. It's either time or money, right? Someone who, like me, who grinds the game and plays no money spent, I am no money spent, but I am not free to play, which is why I don't say that, right? Time is money. So that's why I say if you can play 10 hours a week, no excuse to spend money. Don't. You don't really need to. However, if you don't have that because you're very successful, you've got a lot going on, you sit down for the weekend, you want to play a couple games, and this is your way to unwind, spend $100. Go ahead. If you've got excessive income, for sure. What ends up happening and what I see a lot, especially when it's like, I've seen it a lot with like new streamers and stuff, and they get this like pressure where it's like you don't have a ton of money, but they feel the need that they've got to spin the wheel. That's what's dangerous, right? And showing people packs and whatnot constantly. I just, it's a dangerous loophole. I'll be honest with you. I talk about Pokemon TCG Pocket all the time. I've spent real money in that game, and I play it quite a bit because I enjoy it, right? The issue I have, early on in the year, the packs just weren't worth it, right? And that needs to be said for sure. Like there has been some packs that have come out that are totally worth the money if you were to if you were going to spend money for sure. And I will always point those out. There aren't very many, but there are some for sure. When it comes to that, when it comes to the warp speed players out for fantasy hockey players, I am now playing Huts with the default in the back of my mind that I'm not stopping until I get to Division 1. I'm at that point in the year where I'm locking in. So my lineup matters. If that is not the case and you're just playing, then you could do it now. Warp speed players, guys, like speed is the most important attribute. It is. It will always be. That like until they figure out a new way around it, it just simply that's it. If you can fly down the boards faster than someone else, it puts pressure on your opponent, and if they don't defend it correctly, like they're in a lot of trouble, right? So I would there isn't enough fantasy cards I think that are better than the warp speed cards yet. So I wouldn't do it just yet. All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode of Who Should You Choose. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.